Hello. My name is Chloe. Chloe Harrington Jr. to be precise. At least that's who I was until this evening. Most people would kill for a college graduation party like mine. It's being held in the grand ballroom of the Harrington estate, a place so heavy with history and walnut polish it feels hard to breathe. There's a string quartet in the corner, and the champagne bubbling in those fluted glasses costs more per bottle than my first car. I just wanted it to be over. As it turned out, it was just beginning. The quartet faded out on a polite, unresolved chord, which was the cue. My Aunt Matilda, the matriarch and CEO of Harrington Global, tapped a silver spoon against her crystal glass. The sound cut through the murmuring. She glided to the center of the room, a silver-blue Armani gown shimmering like armor. Matilda doesn't just enter a room, she assesses it for weaknesses. Her smile, a carefully calibrated currency, swept across her guests. "What a wonderful, wonderful evening," she purred, her voice like cold silk. Her eyes found me standing near the back, and the smile tightened just a fraction. "A night to celebrate our dear Chloe. She has always marched to the beat of her own drum." A few polite, knowing chuckles rippled through the crowd. In the Harrington lexicon, her own drum was a polite way of saying a consistent and baffling disappointment. "Chloe has always been our academic," Matilda continued, drawing the word out as if it tasted strange. "And now that she is finally entering the real world, we, as a family, have decided that the greatest graduation gift we could give her is freedom." She nodded. Her personal assistant, a man who always looked perpetually braced for impact, stepped forward. He wasn't carrying a gift bag or a jewelry box. He was carrying a single, slim folder made of heavy, embossed leather. "Chloe, darling," Matilda said, her voice dripping with a poisonous theatrical sympathy. "This is your severance. We are formally releasing you from all future obligations at Harrington Global." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. "And, of course, from your position in the family trust, so that you may," she smiled brightly for the crowd, "fully dedicate yourself to to your passions. Unburdened." She presented the folder to me. The room fell silent. This wasn't a celebration, it was an execution, a public one. I could feel hundreds of eyes on me, hungry for the scene. They were expecting tears. They were expecting me to beg, to collapse in on myself. My mother, across the room, was already raising a handkerchief to her face, a perfect portrait of a grieving parent. My cousin Thomas was smirking into his glass. This was the final move in their game. The impractical one, the too soft, variable, was being neatly deleted from the family equation. They didn't know I'd been running a different equation entirely. I've known my place in this family for as long as I can remember. The Harringtons don't just have a family, we have a dynasty. And dynasties are built on reputation, on influence, on optics. Harrington Global isn't a company, it's a brand, and the brand is legacy. My father's job, as head of communications, was to polish that legacy. My mother's job was to host the parties and forge the social alliances that kept it afloat. My cousin Thomas was the heir apparent, a shark in a handmade suit, practicing the kind of vulture capitalism my grandfather perfected. And I was the rounding error. I remember this one dinner, about a year ago, in the formal dining room. The mahogany table is so long you have to raise your voice to ask for the salt. Thomas was holding court, bragging about a hostile takeover. "We bled them dry," he laughed, cutting into his steak. "The board folded in 48 hours. "Excellent, Thomas," Aunt Matilda said, with genuine approval. "Clean, decisive." Her eyes flicked to me. "And you, Chloe, still in the library, are we?" "Actually," I said quietly, "I just won the university's Chancellor's Prize for my paper on archival data systems." My mother gave a nervous flutter. "Oh, how lovely, dear. Archival? What?" Thomas scoffed. "You mean like filing?" "It's about predictive modeling." I tried to explain, analyzing historical logistics data to find patterns of inefficiency. I actually analyzed some of Harrington Global's early shipping routes. I think I found Enough, Matilda said. It wasn't a shout, it was a simple, flat command. The entire table went silent. We build the future here, Chloe. We don't dig through the past like a grave robber. Leave the dead where they lie. She turned back to Thomas. Now, about that merger, that was the moment I stopped trying to explain. I just observed. My punishment for being impractical was to be given a job after I graduated summa cum laude with a degree they didn't understand. They didn't put me in finance or acquisitions. They didn't even put me in the mailroom. They exiled me to the corporate archive. It was in the sub-basement of the Harrington Tower, a place that hadn't been properly updated since the 1980s. It was meant to be my shame, my quiet, dusty little prison, far away from the noise and the power of the boardroom floors. It became my sanctuary. It was the only honest place in the entire building. It smelled of old paper, vanilla, and the faint, sharp tang of microfoam cleaner. Up on the 50th floor, they traded in optics and flexions and narratives. Down here, in the cold, quiet dark, I had the truth. They thought I was just filing. They thought I was sitting in the dark, mourning my exile. They didn't know I was digitizing. I was cross-referencing. I was building a system. My passion project, the one they all mocked, was data. Hard, cold, undeniable data. And the Harrington archive was the richest data set I'd ever seen. I wasn't just working, I was cataloging. I wasn't looking for a weapon. I was just, as always, trying to put things in order. The anomaly appeared 3 months ago. A Tuesday. I was digitizing a stack of vendor invoices from 1998, just after my grandfather died and Matilda took over as CEO. A name caught my eye, Vertex Industries. I didn't recognize it. It wasn't on our official vendor lists. The invoices were for logistical consulting, a charge so vague it was meaningless. The payments weren't huge, not at first, just enough to fly under the radar, but they were consistent. Every quarter, like clockwork. I pulled the 1999 files. Vertex Industries. The payments were larger. I pulled 2,000. Larger still. I spent a week, working late, fueled by stale coffee from the basement vending machine. I built a new database. Just for Vertex, I cross-referenced the name with our incorporation records. Nothing. State registries. Nothing. International registries. Nothing. Vertex Industries did not exist. It was a ghost that, by my calculations, had been paid over $94 million over 25 years. My hands were shaking, but I kept working. I needed the final piece. I went to the executive authorization ledgers, the physical leather-bound books that Matilda insisted on keeping, and I found it. Every single payment to Vertex Industries was authorized by a single signature, using a loophole in the corporate charter that gave the CEO sole discretion over legacy vendor accounts. Matilda Harrington. She wasn't just skimming, she was systematically, meticulously gutting the company from the inside, bleeding the legacy she claimed to protect, one quarterly payment at a time, into a shell company that I was willing to bet led directly to an offshore account. I didn't panic. I didn't run upstairs. I did what an archivist does. I scanned every ledger, every invoice, every signature. I used my meager salary to hire a forensic accountant, a retired bulldog from out of state who didn't know the Harrington name and didn't care. I sent him the data in encrypted files. His report came back last week. It was beautiful in its precision. It wasn't just an accusation, it was a mathematical proof. Undeniable. I made copies. I put one in a simple cardboard manila folder. And I waited, which brought us back to the ballroom. Me, standing there, holding her heavy leather folder, her severance. The silence in the room was absolute. Matilda was watching me, that sympathetic mask perfectly in place, waiting for my collapse. I took a breath. And then I did something she didn't expect. I smiled. A small, polite smile. I tucked her leather folder under my arm. "Thank you, Aunt Matilda," I said. My voice was quiet, but in the vacuum, it carried perfectly. "This is very clarifying." Her smile faltered. This wasn't in her script. I'm so glad you decided to do this tonight, I continued, reaching into the simple tote bag I'd left by my chair. It feels right to settle all family business at once. I pulled out my own folder. Not leather. Simple beige cardboard, the kind you buy in a pack of 10 at an office supply store. What is this, Chloe? She asked, her tone hardening. The velvet was gone from her voice. It's also a copy, I said. I didn't walk toward her. I walked toward Mr. Davies, the family's chief legal counsel, who was standing beside her, looking pale. He, at least, understood what a deviation from the script meant. I believe this is a matter for counsel, I said, holding the folder out to him. He took it, his hands visibly trembling. Matilda's eyes narrowed. Chloe, this is not the time for your childish games. It's not a game, Aunt, I said. I looked past her, at the crowd. It's an audit. Mr. Davies opened the folder. He only had to read the cover page. I saw the blood drain from his face. I saw his knees almost buckle. What is Vertex Industries? He whispered, horrified. That's what I wondered, I said, turning my gaze back to Matilda. Her mask was gone. Her face was white with a sudden dawning rage. It's a shell corporation. The recipient of $94 million in unauthorized, non-existent consulting fees paid out over 25 years. I let that hang in the air. You, she hissed, taking a step toward me. All personally authorized by you, Aunt Matilda. I finished. I was no longer whispering. It's not optics. It's not a narrative. It's just math. Simple subtraction. I looked at Mr. Davies, who looked like he was going to be sick. The original report, along with all supporting documentation from the archive, was filed with the Securities and Exchange Commission at 8 a.m. this morning. Hard copies were messengered with the non-family members of the board 2 hours ago. I imagine they're convening an emergency meeting right about now. The chaos. It was beautiful. Matilda's face, which I had only ever seen in perfect controlled composure, crumpled. It was a symphony of emotions, rage, then panic, then pure, undiluted fear. My mother let out a small, strangled scream. Chloe, what have you done? My cousin Thomas just stared, his jaw slack. The shark had become a goldfish. The murmuring in the room was no longer polite. It was predatory. The allies were already creating physical distance from Matilda. The brand was cracking. The dynasty was imploding. I looked at my aunt. You said you were giving me my freedom. You were right. You can keep this. I held up her leather folder, then let it drop to the floor. I already have my own. I turned and walked away. I didn't run. I walked, my footsteps clicking calmly on the marble floor. I could hear a chair scrape. I heard my father shout my name. Chloe, you come back here. You've ruined us. I didn't look back. The heavy oak doors of the ballroom closed behind me with a soft, final thud. The hallway was cool and blessedly silent. I walked out the front door, into the damp night air. It smelled like rain and exhaust and freedom. It was the first clean breath I'd taken all night. I felt nothing. Not joy, not anger, not revenge. I just felt order. The accounts were balanced. The books were closed. My purse vibrated. I pulled out my phone. A text from my father. You've destroyed this family. Call me. A text from my mother. Matilda fainted. The lawyers are here. How could you do this to us? A text from Thomas. We need to talk. Now. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I pressed the power button, holding it down until the screen went dark. He spent my entire life teaching me that power was noise, that it was parties and headlines and booming voices in boardrooms. They were wrong. They never understood that while they were making all that noise, I was in the basement, listening, and the person who controls the records, the person who has the proof, is the only one who truly has power. They thought silence was a weakness. They didn't realize it was a strategy. Some stories don't end with forgiveness. They end with clarity. And in the quiet of my new life, for the first time, everything is finally perfectly clear.